Get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Emily Anderson, and thanks for taking some time out to meet with me today. We're going to cover a lot of information, and we're going to talk about franchising. And there's a couple of options. Over the years, I have worked with many people that make a complete career change and get into franchise ownership. Franchising is also an excellent investment opportunity, and frankly, it can be both. So we're going to be unpacking this over the course of the next hour. Maybe we'll wrap up a little bit early. So why are we even here? Why are we thinking about franchising or starting a business? And only you can really know what it is that you are looking to achieve. You know, some people are just looking for success. And what does success look like for you? And every single person joining us today is going to have a different definition of what success looks like. And I might even rephrase this question in terms of, if you are here today, what is missing? What is missing either in your career, in your portfolio, in your path to achieving your goals? Or is your current path going to empower you to reach your goals? Common goals: people are looking for freedom, control, and real wealth creation. So my name is Emily Anderson. I am with FranNet. I owned my own small business about 20 years ago. I got to the point where I needed to either scale or bail on that small business. I decided to bail. I took a very exciting job at a Silicon Valley startup, and I made as much money as I had ever seen at the time for 6 whole months before venture capitalists pulled the rug out from under us. I'm a member of the Small Business Development Center Advisory Council. My husband and I founded a business about 3 years ago, which is a nonprofit. And I provide free education and coaching through a couple arms of the Small Business Administration. And you might want to jot these down or make a mental note. The SBDC stands for Small Business Development Center, and SCORE is an acronym for Service Corps of Retired Executives. Now, these are 2 resources that are part of the Small Business Administration that provide free small business advising to new or existing business owners, and those resources are available to you. Now, in terms of my personal path, where I got to the point in my business, as I mentioned, where I needed to scale or bail, I was a one-woman show, and there were no systems in place. No one had carved out the path. No one had figured out the best customer acquisition strategies. No one was available to help me determine when or if I could afford to hire, et cetera. And these are some of the examples that are available in a franchise model. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, I want to be clear. My services are entirely free. I'm not here to talk you in or out of anything. I am here as a professional to advocate for you. What I have found is that business ownership is not for everyone. I'm here to empower you to access information so that you can decide if it makes sense for you. And I have found that having a systematized approach that provides a lot of options ensures not only thorough due diligence, but that we're leaving no stone unturned. And frankly, starting a business can be really scary. And of course, no one wants to make business decisions based on emotions, but it's really hard to pretend that emotions don't exist when we are exploring a significant investment and perhaps a complete career change. So I'm here to help you navigate these waters and to put you in the driver's seat so you are always in control throughout every step of the process. Now, my clients, well, they're a variety of people. Most of my clients are looking to build wealth in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they're just looking for something different in their career. Maybe they want more autonomy, quality of life, to have income security. What is unusual, I will candidly, over the last almost 10 years, up until 2 years ago, the vast majority of my clients were professionals in career transition that had been laid off. Now, currently, most of my clients have a full-time salaried position. And what I'm constantly hearing is that they don't want to depend on corporate for that one sole income. So we're looking at income security, not job security anymore. And then lastly, I am hearing more of an aspirational calling to create generational wealth. Now, a job is usually a great means of reaching our short-term financial goals. A business is often a better path for reaching our long-term financial goals and for creating real wealth for our children and our grandchildren. So what we're going to talk about today is why franchising. I mean, isn't it all the golden arches and the $5 footlong? How do we conduct thorough due diligence, and how does that differ than maybe a business acquisition or a startup venture? There are a range of investment levels. We're going to talk about those. And ultimately, I can give you all the facts and figures, but I want to empower you to walk away and say, okay, all of that sounds great, but how do I know if it's right for me? And I'm going to give you some tools and resources that you can use right away if you are so inclined to take some next steps. And if you haven't already, I invite you to have your phone handy. I'm going to provide a QR code at the end of this session so that you can request some of this additional information and materials. Okay, so why own a franchise? Candidly, I used to think that franchising was all fast food. And if you can clear your mind and just wipe that slate, a franchise is a vehicle for helping you reach your goals. And it can provide you a vehicle for reaching lifestyle goals, financial goals, in a way to significantly reduce risk and have a real competitive advantage. So for many of us, I'm age 45, and for many of us around my age or older, when we started our career, there was, let me put it this way, one of the most common interview questions 20, 25 years ago was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And there was an assumption or perhaps an unspoken promise that if you played by the rules, you would work your way up the ranks, increase your salary, increase security of your job. They don't ask that question anymore. I don't know if the interviewer even knows where they're going to be in 5 years. So those rules of being so loyal to the company, those rules have changed. It's not about job security anymore. It's about income security. So once upon a time, when we got a job, there was very little risk of losing that job. And you'll see in this blue line here, like my father-in-law, he worked for General Mills for something like 45 years. Now today, when you get a job, there's very little risk of losing that job in the short term. You'll probably get a paycheck in 2 weeks. However, over time, the longer we have that position, the less secure it becomes. Performance, the ability to drive results, does not equal security. And as a matter of fact, as we progress in our career and achieve a higher level of experience, knowledge, seniority, and command a higher salary, when we get laid off, and I was told by a national corporate consulting organization last week, the average tenure is 4 to 6 years. So let's average that out to 5 years. Let's say every 5 years, we are looking for work. And as we progress up that corporate ladder, when we are out of work, we are competing with more and more professionals that are looking for fewer and fewer available jobs. The exact opposite is true when it comes to a business. Yes, there is risk involved in business. However, the risk is highest at the beginning. The longer you own your business, the more secure it becomes. No one can take it away from you. You can't be downsized. You are in control in terms of how, when, and how quickly you grow your business. Now, there are some paths to business ownership that are more risky, and some are less risky. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. Here we are, the 4 paths to entrepreneurship. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to all of these paths to entrepreneurship. I am not here to say that one is better than another. I will say, I believe that franchise investing is the most overlooked and misunderstood of these 4 paths. And when we go back and when we look at which paths have the highest risk, franchise ownership tends to have the lowest. So there's advantages and disadvantages to franchising. And here's a list, and frankly, you are probably very familiar with some of the items on this list, but there might be some information here that you're not already aware of. So obviously with a franchise, we have the trademark, the brand name, and the recognition that comes along with it. And we have a proven business system. But what exactly does that mean? What is entailed in a business system? A lot. A franchise business system, a good franchise business system, is generally going to have intelligence on the best means for customer acquisition, the most efficient accounting systems, training. They're going to help you with your metrics, the CRM, the software, whatever is most efficient and most affordable for this particular business. Operations, how to compete in the marketplace. What about labor? Employees? Now that is quite a hot topic right now. What are the best methods for not only securing, but retaining your staff and your team? There is huge preferred pricing. There is buying power in being part of a franchise model, as opposed to just being a startup entrepreneur, or even if you go into a business acquisition. There's significant R&D. If your business depends on a location, there is significant value with a franchisor that has already identified the ideal locations for your business. They can help you with site selection, lease negotiation, and build out. National partnerships are a huge advantage in a franchise model. And these are just part of the business system. Obviously, with the business, there's more, with the franchise, there's more training and support. And I just invite you to think about one thing. Most of the time when I start working with individuals looking at franchising, they are exceptionally interested or frankly concerned around the type of training and support that they will be able to access through the franchisor. And that is very important. But what most people don't realize is once the doors are open, once your business is open, the other franchise owners in that system are an enormous resource for support. FranNet is a franchise, and I speak with other FranNet owners probably every day to exchange best practices, ideas, and to help each other. Franchising statistically has a higher success rate and a faster ramp up. And I'm going to get back to this faster ramp up point in just a second. Obviously, in part because there's a shorter learning curve. There are better financing options with a franchise. And as a matter of fact, just yesterday, we hosted a 30-minute financing session with one of our premier funding partners. I do have that recording. So if anybody wants to comment in the chat or shoot me an email, if you'd like me to send you a link to that recording, it's also up on my YouTube channel. And you can learn firsthand what are some of the financing options that are available in franchising. The industry is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and each franchisor or franchise brand is mandated by law to have a franchise disclosure document. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here because I want to show you. This is a franchise disclosure document. This is printed on both sides. So holy moly. The franchise disclosure document is going to provide an enormous amount of data and information that has been audited by a third party and overseen a tremendous legal review to provide you with a high level of transparency and information about that franchise. We're going to get back to that in just a second. Let's go back to sharing my screen. Just got to put a pause on that. One thing that's really advantageous around franchising, I find, is the culture. With franchising, it's a common expression is you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So there is a high degree of autonomy. You are a small business owner. The best way I can describe the benefit of having kind of the sense of team or a family is a few years ago, one of the FranNet franchisees was diagnosed with cancer. And understandably, she needed to take some time out for her business, take care of what's most important. Here's the thing. I know how to successfully run her FranNet business. There are 100 franchise owners across the country and the franchisor. We know how to successfully run her business. So when she needed to take some time out to take care of herself and recover, we were easily able to step in. I know how to consult her clients. We know how to market her workshops. So we were able to step in and ensure that her business ran smoothly and that she and her family did not take a financial hit. I'm happy to say today she's in remission and she's running her business just as successfully as any other time, but I'm not aware of any other entrepreneurial path where there are people who will have your back when life happens. Now, hopefully it never happens. Otherwise, it's just a pleasure to be a part of such an amazing organization and work in parallel with like-minded professionals. But life happens. So through thick and thin, you've got some people to rely on. One thing that surprises a lot of people is that industry experience is not required in franchising. To be successful in a franchise model, it's really more about the transferable skills, the soft skills. And I have a resource that will help you really identify and highlight your top skills, whether that's leadership, management, operations, customer satisfaction. Those are the things that a franchisor is looking for you to bring to the table. And if you're ever interviewing for a job and told that you are overqualified, or if you're wanting to hide any gray hair, I will tell you that those skills, and maybe even that gray, is enormously advantageous when it comes to owning a business. And lastly, one thing that is very unique to franchising is, one of the benefits of business ownership is not only are we able to create tax advantaged income, but we're also creating a sellable asset that is usually sold at a multiple. On FranNet's blog, there is a report that shows that with franchise businesses specifically, not only are we able to accelerate that equity event, but franchises tend to sell for a higher multiple than non-franchise businesses. So for our exit event, we're able to have better control when we exit the business and sell for a higher multiple. This is unique to franchising. Now, some disadvantages. Now, franchising is not all rainbows and unicorns. There are geographic restrictions. And this is the good news, bad news when it comes to franchise investing. So the good news is that a franchisor has identified for your business to be successful, it needs to be able to serve perhaps a certain population density or maybe a certain geographical radius. Now, the bad news is if you fall in love with a franchise and the territory that you want to serve, maybe where you live, has already been acquired. Or I live in Central Oregon. We have a population of about 100,000. And the truth is that is not sufficient to support some franchises. So there might be a franchise that I would like to start here, but I wouldn't be able to start in Central Oregon because we don't have sufficient population to support it. But isn't that good to know before I make a significant investment? There are royalties and marketing fees. Now, the idea is to significantly reduce your risk for a certain percentage of revenue. One thing I invite you to ask yourself is, do I expect to make significantly more earnings in a franchise model than if I were to do it myself that would actually offset those royalties and marketing fees? There's a way we can find out to the most part. Franchising, there is a rule book. There is some shared control. As a part of FranNet, I can't just start changing up the branding colors. With shared control in a rule book, we follow certain processes and procedures. That might look like only providing the products or service that the franchisor provides. And there are fewer industry options. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a second. In terms of fewer industry options, a really common question I get is, what is the hottest franchise? Like, what's the latest and greatest? And there are some franchises that tend to be really booming and thriving, but where franchising is successful is not necessarily in the newest industry or the latest trend. Where franchising is successful is it takes an industry that has high demand, but is also highly fragmented. There are no dominant players, and it's largely the demand is met by small mom and pops. So what franchising does is say, hey, we see there's a huge demand for this, and we are going to meet that demand by providing market excellence, more efficient systems, better customer acquisition strategies, better operational systems, better marketing. And in that way, franchising creates consolidation to meet and serve that demand. So if you're looking for the latest and greatest, it's going to be harder to find in a franchise. And thus, there tend to be fewer industry options. Some things to consider and ask yourself if you're thinking, oh, this franchise route sounds really good. First of all, can you work within some guardrails? Some franchises have very structured, you might even say rigid operating systems. Some provide general parameters with a lot of room for innovation. Where do you fall on that continuum, and is it a good fit for you? Do you enjoy being part of something bigger? Sometimes, once in a while, I hear someone say, oh, well, if it's a franchise, it's a sure thing. No, there is still risk, even in starting a franchise. It is less risk, but it's not less work. It's different work. So for example, if you were to do a startup venture, you would be creating the systems as opposed to a franchise where you would be executing the systems. Perhaps in a business acquisition, usually we're paying that premium to reduce risk in those first couple of years. And usually the work we're doing in a business acquisition is a turnaround, if you will. So that might be completely turning around your employees and your staff. It might be turning around or creating new systems. There's a number of things that are involved in a business acquisition. The thing about a franchise, and frankly, some people really enjoy the challenge of that. The thing about a franchise is it's not less work, but the work that you are doing has been proven by the system and other franchisees to really drive and support the bottom line. Please ensure you have the appropriate transferable skills. Again, industry experience is not only required, but oftentimes franchisors don't want someone with industry experience. Why? Well, they could be bringing in the systems from their experience that may not be compatible with the franchise systems. Also, if you buy a franchise where you have industry experience, you're vulnerable to thinking and acting like an employee. A franchisor wants you thinking and acting like a business owner. If at some point in your franchise due diligence or investment, you decide to have a legal review. If I had a megaphone right now, this would be one of my megaphone moments. Please only work with an attorney that specializes in franchise law. This is not a business attorney. This is not someone who's owned a franchise for 20 years. This is not someone who's read 500 franchise disclosure documents. I am happy to provide referrals to excellent franchise attorneys to support you. Now, earlier I jokingly talked about, I used to think it was all the golden arches or the $5 foot long, but if you can open your mind to what's available in franchising, and just a fun fact, okay, I've been doing this for 9 years. I have helped place many people in franchise models, and it just so happens that to date, I've never placed anyone in a food-related business. These are the businesses and the industries where we really see people buying. So I mentioned that FranNet is a franchise, and we've been around for about 32 years. As a result, we have been placing people in business ownership during the dot-com bust, 9/11, the Great Recession, and yes, even a pandemic. And what we have found is that there are certain industries that significantly reduce risk and have been proven to thrive in just about any economy, even a pandemic. Now, these tend to be demographically driven markets, essential services, or certain B2B opportunities. Now, one of the key things that we talked about is franchising as a career, an investment, or both. A very popular avenue or ownership model within the franchise industry is called semi-absentee ownership. So when I say semi-absentee, think semi-passive, where you as the owner are not working full-time in the business, more remotely working on the business. Many people, and currently just about all of my clients, as I mentioned earlier, have a full-time salaried professional position and are looking to create an additional revenue stream, are looking to build equity, to increase their net worth, to create generational wealth. So some characteristics of semi-absentee businesses. Some of this has really changed during COVID. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. So prior to COVID, a semi-absentee or a semi-passive business was usually a location-based business, retail, storefront. Usually customer acquisition would be driven by the brand name, the signage, et cetera. And in that location, your key employee, general manager, was overseeing the daily operations and managing the team. You as the owner would be managing that remotely. I mean, most everything is cloud-based. You could look at the staffing hours, the KPIs, providing some leadership for your GM, and you'd be checking in with them periodically. For those location-based semi-absentee businesses, they were a little bit more time-intensive for the owner the first 6 to 12 months. Because as the owner, you would be involved in partnering with the franchisor to find the location, to oversee the build out, to negotiate the lease, et cetera. Once your GM and your team are all in place, usually after that first year, the franchisors are saying, you'd be working 5, 10, maybe 15 hours a week. That was before COVID. What we have seen now, that is still available. But what we have seen during the pandemic is low-cost, service-based businesses, a lot of those essential services that I just mentioned a minute ago, are also now available in a semi-absentee model. So a service-based business, which does not require a location, so it tends to be a lower investment. We still have the overhead of maybe a GM or one key employee. Now, not all service-based businesses are available this way, but this is what we have seen over the last year, year and a half. As a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, we are facilitating events on specific businesses that currently employed professionals are buying. But I just want to plant this seed that now we have more options for franchise investments in terms of investment range and in terms of the services that the business would provide to the public. Okay, by the way, if you have any questions, I'm going to keep moving through this, but at the end, we will have time for Q&A. So if you would like to type those in the chat or in the Q&A, if you want to type that out, in case you forget, feel free, and I'll be sure to address all of those at the end. All right, so of these 4 paths to entrepreneurship, and I shared that statistically, franchise investment is the lowest risk. These are some statistics that were available from the Small Business Administration's website. I'm just the messenger. Now, how do we conduct due diligence? I already talked about this enormous franchise disclosure document that I showed you. Well, here is some information that is included in a franchise disclosure document. You're going to learn all about the franchisor. Who is their leadership team? What's their professional background? Have they ever been sued? Have they ever declared bankruptcy? Item 7 in a franchise disclosure document, or FDD, is going to break down the total investment, how that's broken down, how much working capital that they believe you will need based on what the other franchisees have needed. The royalties, it's all going to be in black and white. The franchise contract is going to be in black and white. You're going to have a really clear understanding in terms of in what ways is the franchisor accountable to you, and in what ways are you accountable to the franchisor? So if we come from a corporate background, most of us are familiar with this type of power relationship, you might say, where some people get to make the decisions and some people make the most money, and we kind of need to do what we're told. I don't know how else to say it. If we take that in franchising, flip it on its side. This is a partnership where the franchisor is kind of like a board of directors. I've worked with a number of veterans. Oftentimes veterans say, hey, I see the franchisor as my commanding officer. They have my back and they have my best interest, and I am accountable to them. Your territory is going to be defined in this. The listing and contact information for all franchise owners in that brand. Yeah. This FDD, this is for one franchise, and in this are the names and contact information of everyone who currently is or ever has been an owner in that franchise model. And we're going to talk about why is that so important? To conduct thorough due diligence and to make a well-informed decision if this particular franchise is a good fit for us, we're going to talk to them. We'll get to that in a second. How much is this going to cost? Well, I will tell you this. So FranNet, I currently work with about 250 thoroughly vetted, pre-screened franchise businesses. These are businesses, the businesses that tend to work with FranNet and are looking for franchise investors tend to have a higher barrier to entry. And I'm not talking about cost, even though that's the slide we're looking at here. I mean, they are more selective to whom they will award a franchise. All right. There are some franchises out there, candidly, if you can write a check, they'll give you the franchise. We work with people that are looking for strategic partners. Now, of these about 250 brands, about 2/3 of them have a total investment of $250,000 and under. Now, this does not mean you need $250,000 sitting in your bank account. Usually, what a lender and the franchisor are looking for is someone who can access about 25% of the total investment in a cash injection, and then usually can finance the rest. So let's say if you have access to, if you say, hey, at the end of the day, if and only if I were able to find the right franchise investment, I would be willing to put in $50K. Okay, well, that's 25% of 200K. So we would more or less be looking at a total investment of 200. Now, I've got some great financing partners that can help you. This is just really high level that can help you really understand your best investment level and strategy. Banks love to loan money to people that don't need it. So, you might qualify for $1 million loan, but it doesn't mean that we want to take out $1 million loan. Now, I used 50K as an example. Here's some sources where you might be able to access that. And some of these might surprise you. Most of my clients don't have $50,000 sitting in a checking or savings account. Sometimes when it comes to creating generational wealth, multi-generational ownership comes on. So there might be an older parent with a young adult child, and they might all invest as a family. Home equity lines of credit right now are readily available and have pretty low interest rates. Same thing as securities-backed loans or portfolio loans. Those, as a matter of fact, currently I think have the lowest interest rates. And again, I can provide you a link to yesterday's 30-minute session on financing. SBA loans are available. I will tell you, the SBA loans are taking significantly longer than they have pre-COVID. Also, lenders they're just more stringent. So if you know for sure that you are going to need an SBA loan, my suggestion is to start the process sooner than you think. There's a lot of paperwork. There are a lot of hoops to jump through. Perhaps even if you're saying, hey, I really want to be in business for myself in 6 months, start filling out the paperwork, jump through some of the hoops. I wouldn't incur an out-of-pocket expense. I wouldn't pay somebody to package the loan if we haven't found the right business yet. But the benefit of owning a business is being in control. And so what we want to avoid is finding the right business, but then not being able to fund it for 6 months because we're waiting on SBA. Okay, I do want to highlight and just pause here, looking at that bottom bullet, because most people are just not aware of this. Candidly, I can count on one hand the number of financial planners that are aware of this funding strategy, and we've been doing it since the 70s. So you can use a portion of your retirement toward the acquisition of a business or franchise without paying taxes or penalties. I'm going to say that one more time. You can use a portion of your retirement toward the acquisition of a business or franchise without paying taxes or penalties. At least half of my clients use this funding strategy to access the cash injection. For the most part, my clients today are using a combination of these types of financing strategies. So they might roll over some funds from their retirement and get an SBA loan. Your strategy is going to be unique to you, your situation, and your goals. And again, I'm happy to provide a recording link or even a personal introduction to some of our premier lending partners that provide a complimentary consultation to help you really understand your options and your strategies. And please keep in mind, some people think the more money you invest, the more money you can make, and it's absolutely not true. If anything, some low-cost service-based businesses have the highest margins. It's not about finding the one franchise out there that makes the most money. It needs to be the franchise that is the best fit for your skill set, your lifestyle, and your financial goals. So I love this quote. And we have been walking through the last year or two some pretty uncertain times. So rather than looking back, let's look ahead for a second. A year from now is going to be October of 2022. What do you think things are going to look like a year from now? Most businesses have reopened. Unemployment rate is down. So if you're thinking things are looking pretty positive, we might be saying, okay, a year from now, I would love to be a business owner, or perhaps even have my business open sooner, let's say in 6 months. If we're looking at a semi-absentee business that is based on a location, we're usually looking at something that's about a year out. Why? Because it takes time to find the location and the build out. If we're looking at a service-based business, and this can be franchising as a career, or there are some service-based semi-absentee businesses, those could usually be open a lot faster. All right, so this is kind of the key difference. And I'm an advocate of start with the end in mind. When do you want your business open? When do you need it cash flow positive? And then work back from there. So let's say a year from now, we would like to have a semi-passive storefront business. Well, if that is our goal, we need to ensure that we have time to go through training with the franchisor. And in order to access training, we need to sign a franchise agreement. If we're going to be ready to sign a franchise agreement, we need to ensure that our funding is in place. And if we need to know what business we need to fund, we need to start looking at our options now. If we were to zoom out and look at a 10-year timeline for franchise investing, we can have a sellable asset, I would say conservatively, in 5 years. Let's say, okay, 5 years, we've got a nice sellable asset, but we're not ready to exit just yet. Okay, maybe say 8 years out, we say, I think I'm going to be ready to make a change. Most franchise agreements are about 10 years. So let's say 8 years out, you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to start planning my exit. We're looking at an equity event maybe 10 years out. Compare that to solely being a W-2 employee, as opposed to a tax-advantaged income and a sellable asset in 10 years. Solely as a W-2 employee, we're looking at job, no income. Job, no income. And again, the average tenure is 4 to 6 years. So we might actually be looking at multiple jobs over the next 10 years. How do we know? Okay, I've provided you with a lot of information, and you might be thinking, okay, this sounds really good. This looks really good. I'll just start Googling franchises. If it were that simple, I wouldn't be here today. So how can you determine if this makes sense for you? Now, I can't tell you if this makes sense for you. If you resonate with some of my clients and what they're looking to achieve through a franchise investment as a vehicle, here are some things you can do. First of all, by finding, once you find a franchise and you see it and you say, oh, I like this product or service, stop. For starters, we want to separate the function of the business from the function of the business owner. So business ownership is not, and I know this sounds silly, but like, I love sandwiches, so I'm going to buy a deli. Or I love to work out all the time, so I'm going to buy a gym. Separate those things. Any franchise you look at, the first step in your research process is going to be having a conversation with the franchisor. And it's like everybody's going to have their best face forward. They're going to try to make a good impression on you. If they're a good franchisor, they're going to be vetting you. So you want to make a good impression on them. They're going to provide you with high-level information, the value proposition of the business. They'll probably tell you a bit about the industry. And after a conversation or two, they will probably send you the franchise disclosure document. Side note, when you receive the FDD or the franchise disclosure document, if you can see this, they're going to ask you to sign. Now, we're not signing a franchise agreement, a franchise contract. We're not agreeing to anything. By signing, we are just confirming receipt. Why? As I mentioned before, the franchise industry is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and the Federal Trade Commission will not allow you to sign a franchise agreement within 2 weeks of receiving the FDD. They want to make sure that you have sufficient time to process and make sense of all of this information. So when you get the FDD, just sign and date the receipt. After a couple of conversations with the franchisor, the next step, if you decide you still want to learn more about that franchise, is to speak with the franchisees. And remember, I mentioned this earlier. This is, in my opinion, the most important step of the research process. Why? The franchisor, sometimes, I don't want to say they're salesy, but they can be. They want you to join in. The franchisees, they have no vested interest in whether you decide to join the franchise brand or not. And they're going to tell you what it's really like. And you can ask them anything. You might ask, what kind of training and support did you get from the franchisor? And do you think it was sufficient? Has it been hard to find and retain employees? You might say, hey, I'm looking to be really semi-passive. Do you think I'd be able to successfully own and oversee this business in 10 hours a week? You might say, I'm looking to replace a 6-figure corporate salary. Do you think I could do that in this business? How long do you think it would take me to reach my financial goals? Ask them anything. And at the end of the day, what I am looking for is for you to be able to say, yes, I could really see myself in this business. Yes, I think I can reach my goals in this business. Or no, I wouldn't enjoy doing this. I can't see myself doing this. I wouldn't be able to reach my goals. Because to this point, we haven't spent any money. We have taken a lot of time to have these conversations, but we are getting an enormous amount of information without spending a dime. If and when you get to the point where you've spoken with enough franchise owners where you're more or less starting to hear the same thing, and you can really see yourself in this business, then we go on to the next step. Oh, here's some questions we might ask. Then we go on to the next step, which is to visit the franchisor. Now, sometimes these happen by getting on a plane and visiting the franchise headquarters. Sometimes this happens virtually, but this is really when the franchisor is going to say, okay, we see you are really serious. We're going to share a little bit more information with you. And usually within about a week of visiting the franchisor, they're looking for you to make a yes or no decision. It's not to pressure you. Ultimately, the franchisor knows that to be successful as a business owner, you need to be able to make decisions once you access the information, and that's what they're looking for from you. If you are awarded a franchise and if you decide to move forward, you may want to consult with a CPA, a franchise attorney, if you haven't already. All right, and this entire process can take as little as 2 months. Usually 3 months is about the average. You're in control of the driver's seat. Candidly, if you're thinking, I'm not going to be ready to invest in any type of franchise for another 6 months to a year, probably don't want to start your research process yet. Simply because if we're not ready to make a commitment a year out, we might start researching a franchise and it might get acquired by someone else by the time that you want to move forward. Okay, how do we know if this is right for us? Well, that's the process of determining how do we know which franchises are best for you. I invite you to grab your phone, turn on the camera feature and focus it over this QR code. And this is an opportunity for you to get a customized entrepreneur profile. Now, this is a lot like a DISC or a Myers-Briggs, except it's specific to entrepreneurship. And well, depending on your eyesight here, you can look at that screenshot. Some of the information that you can learn about yourself is, do you profile best as an independent contractor Do you profile as a single unit franchise owner, maybe a multiple unit franchise owner, maybe a master developer? Or it'll tell us, hey, it doesn't look like owning a business or a franchise is really in your best interest. It's also going to help us identify what specific businesses or industries are the best fit for your personality, what you already know how to do, what you're already good at, your skills and your goals. You'll get an 11-page report. It does require some interpretation. So we just get on the phone and talk through your results. I can answer any questions. And then from there, you decide how or if you want to proceed. You know, part of this process is really customizing the process to you, to understanding what makes you tick. Under what circumstances do you perform best? What type of business model is your best fit in terms of employees, operational systems, customer acquisition strategies? There's all kinds of considerations. And what I recommend doing is, if you're serious about this, is we sit down and, similar to designing a blueprint for a custom house, we design a blueprint for a custom business. And then based on the blueprint for your business goals, I look and see if there's any franchises out of the 250 that have been approved and see which ones are the closest match for your blueprint. So again, if you want to utilize this QR code, you're going to see a pop-up that looks like that. And then just you tell me, do you want me to send you a link to the entrepreneur profile? Do you want a link to today's recording? Would you like to chat further? This is really, as I said before, you're in control at all times. And I am here to help you navigate the waters and to ultimately help you reach your goal, whether that means business ownership or not. Before we jump to Q&A, I do want to tell you that we do have a couple upcoming events. So I mentioned FranNet is a franchise, and 2 weeks ago, I was in a week-long conference where I met with nearly 100 professionals that are either financing professionals or boutique franchisors. And my team, we are going to consolidate everything that we've learned and share this with you on a 30-minute session. I will go ahead and also copy and paste these links in the chat if you're interested. So that's coming up on the 27th. And then, as I mentioned, in early November, specifically, there were 6 specific businesses that I met with during this conference where they say most of their owners currently have full-time jobs. So if that sounds like investment that you're interested in, I invite you to check it out. So lastly, here's my contact information. I am going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to copy and paste those 2 links that I just mentioned and address any Q&A. So if you would like to attend the Looking Ahead, all things business, franchise, and funding, I will type that into the chat right now. And if you would like to attend the session where we talk about 6 specific investor model businesses where most of their owners have full-time salaried positions, you can check that out. All right, I'm going to tackle the Q&A. What are the odds of buying multiple locations or franchises of the same brand at the same time to diversify location risk? Does this happen, or do I need to start with a single location? Thank you for asking this question. So you have options, actually. When it comes to the thing that I really like about the franchise industry is it is very simple and has very low risk to scale. The most common way to scale is by acquiring additional territory or locations of the same business. Now, you can buy one territory and see how that goes, and then decide if you'd like to add additional territory. or you can buy multiple territories at the same time. Franchisors generally significantly reduce the franchise fee for the second and third territory if you buy them at once. Now, part of this question is to diversify location risk. One of the advantages of having multiple locations is obviously we're going to increase brand recognition. We will be able to leverage the same employee pool and maybe even a general manager. So if we're paying low employees, I'm tripping over my words, if we're paying employees or a general manager to work at one location, it's pretty easy for them to start covering shifts or to train people at the other location. Now, that being said, if you do acquire the rights to, for example, 3 locations, and 3 tends to be the sweet spot, you can do more, you can do less, 3 tends to be the sweet spot. I generally recommend, and I think most franchisors would agree, just open the first location first. Cut your teeth on that. Learn the ropes, and then boom, boom, open the second and third location, not open all 3 locations at the same time. I hope that answers your question. What other questions do you have? Anything else? Feel free to type in the chat or in the Q&A. I know we wrapped up a couple of minutes early. I don't know if anybody ever complained about getting 4 extra minutes in their day. But thank you for your time and attention today. I do hope that this was time well spent. I hope you got some great takeaways to support you on your entrepreneurial path. Again, I'll show my my contact information one more time. Feel free to call me, email me anytime you need. I love having conversations around this and supporting you. And again, my services are free of charge. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and best of luck to you on your entrepreneurial path. Take care.